Okay, this is what I think about the First Amendment on my First Amendment page. Oh, maybe I should get there from my website in case anybody wants to look at it. It's a cool thing to look at. Yeah. So yeah, it's politics. So you go to politics, and then it's of the issues, and then it's the First Amendment right there. So, what I think about politics, okay. First Amendment. So, note, I have it organized in the 300 pixel by 300 pixel by 600 pixel format, which is the best way to organize your stuff. It's the most, um, it's the most symmetrical. So, I even have a video of me talking about First Amendment, what I think a free society is. I basically said it's freedom of speech and free to go where you want. So, this is the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So that's it. Pretty simple. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So it's separation of church and state. I basically mean that to say that they shouldn't be giving tax breaks to churches like they do, because that's a law. And don't prohibit the free exercise of a religion. So if it's your religion to smoke weed, you should be able to do it. Or abridging the freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech, which means we can say whatever we want, wherever we want, whenever we want. And if you're writing stuff, you get to write it too, and you get to sell what you write. Press gets to say whatever they want. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. People get to assemble. Now, that has been violated. Remember the G8 summit in Seattle, when they made the people leave and all they were doing was peaceably assembling, breaking the First Amendment, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Well, that's what they were doing. So, anyways, so let's talk about the First Amendment. My opinion on the First Amendment is that I am for 100% free expression. Okay? I think if everybody gets that, then we'll have a peaceful society. And it'll be a very interesting society. And so I wrote a whole bunch of old stuff down here. I don't even know what I wrote. Schools. They should definitely teach it in schools. And it should start in schools. They should make sure all the kids know what the First Amendment is and express themselves, be taught to express themselves no matter what, because I think there's some problems. This is what the Americans think about the freedom of speech. I didn't write where I got this information, but it was from a Roper or a Gallup poll. It was from a big national poll that they took. And I should have written the details of it, how many people they polled and stuff, but I didn't. But anyways, freedom of the First Amendment is pretty much about 5 different things: freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right to petition your government, and the right of assembly and association. Now, when they asked people to name something about the First Amendment, well, freedom of speech is what we all think about in First Amendment, but less than half of the people even knew that the First Amendment was about freedom of speech. So most of the people were just like, what's an amendment? That's the school's fault. And then it got even worse in '99, until it got better. Wasn't George Bush the president in '99? And then it got better, but then it went down again, and then it got better, and then it went a little bit better, and then it went down. So anyways, it is gradually getting better, though, as you can see. Only 11%, that's a little over 1 out of 10, knew that it had anything to do with the freedom of press. But then it went up to 12, to 14, all the way up to 16, 15, 16. Ended up in 13, a little bit above down here. So it is getting better. Freedom of religion, well, 1 out of 5 knew it was then, and then it went down, and then went even farther down. So I don't know, man. Maybe it was people going after Al-Qaeda, making people think that you don't have freedom of religion, but we do. Right to petition the government. Let's see how that's going. People going up a little bit. Right of assembly going up a little bit, went down. But basically, it's pretty appalling, I think. 1 out of 10 people know that it's the freedom, that the First Amendment goes to the freedom of press and isn't just freedom of speech. Only 1 out of 5 of the people who know about that it's the freedom of speech know that that actually includes what you write. It's not what you say. And then right to get together. And of course, right to actually, you have a right to actually tell your government that you don't, that you want to do something or don't want to do something. 1 out of 50 know that. So that's ridiculous, if you ask me. We really need to. In fact, I had the only government education I ever had in my entire life was 1 quarter in 8th grade. So it was about a couple of weeks in 8th grade, and that's that. You don't need to know any of that. Screwy. And I had all these requirements for math, you know. Math is more important than the Constitution. It's ridiculous. But anyways. First Amendment goes too far in the rights that it guarantees. Okay, we live in a democracy. You know, is our government truly representative of what the people believe? Well, it seems like it's doing okay. I mean, sometimes people think that we don't have the right, we don't live in a free society, or we don't live in a democracy because marijuana is illegal, but the fact of the matter is that most people think that marijuana should be illegal. So, but yeah, the First Amendment goes too far in the rights it guarantees. It makes us too free. Well, obviously most people would strongly disagree with that. We think that we like to be free, and it does a good job. But less than half strongly disagree with that. Most people would only mildly disagree, or even agree. 45, 55, 67% of the people agree. But then you've got a third of Americans in 99, 10 years ago, thought that the First Amendment went too far in the rights that it guarantees. So that's amazing to me. I don't know what those people are thinking. Maybe that was in the age of beginning of the war against terror or something like that. But anyways, let's see how it went from 99 to 2006. Well, the numbers went up. So people are becoming more and more interested in the idea of freedom. And the people who strongly disagree, that number got chopped in half. So it is going towards the direction of people thinking like me, thinking we should have the freedom. I think we like the First Amendment. Okay, the press has too much, too little, or about the right amount of freedom to do what it wants. Well, I think it has too little, because I think well, you know, you're not allowed to do 4-letter words and stuff. But let's see here, too much freedom. 38% thought it had too much freedom. I wonder what they were talking about, what they were thinking of. Too little freedom, 9. I'm in the 9. I'm a 1 out of 10%. About right. About half people think it's about right. Yeah. I don't know much about the press, so. let's see what those numbers did. It actually went backwards. We have more people thinking that the press has too much freedom and less people thinking that it's about right. But more people think that it has too little freedom too. So people are becoming, I guess, a little bit more opinionated. Yeah, but basically staying about the same. Newspapers should be allowed to freely criticize the U.S. military about its strategy and performance. Well, obviously, newspapers should be able to do that, and if people don't agree with the newspapers, they can stop buying those newspapers. It's the First Amendment, but let's see what people say. Well, I strongly agree. I'm in this group here. I'm in the 33, so a third of the people are like me. Mildly agree. So 57%, most people would agree with that they should be allowed to freely criticize. However, 47%, 44% disagree. They think they should not be allowed. You know, a quarter strongly disagree. So a lot of people, a lot of Americans, a big chunk of Americans, like the idea of censorship and of control and of being told what to do and what not to do. It's a fact. And if we live in a democracy and you want to respect that, then you shouldn't blame the government, because the government is just representing the people, and that's what the people are. Just admit that that's what the people are like. And because some people like to blame the government. Okay. Musicians should be allowed to sing songs that others might find offensive. Well, fucking obviously. You could become offended by any number of things. But only a quarter of Americans agree with me. Less than a quarter. And less than half agree. and almost a third strongly disagree, which is completely insane to me. That you shouldn't be allowed to sing a song that somebody else might find offensive, because that includes so much. I could say hanky panky, and somebody's might find that offensive, so then I should not be allowed to sing it? How about in my room? Can I sing it in my room? No, you're not allowed to sing it. That's the law. You can't make laws about that kind of stuff. People should be allowed to say things in public that might be offensive to religious groups. Well, I agree, because I'm 100% for freedom. I'm crazy that way. I'm in the 1/5 percentile. 1/5 of the people are like me, and almost half agree. But you have 38% of the people, more than a third, strongly disagree. They think people should not be allowed to say things in public that might be offensive to a religious group. So let's see. Fuck Jesus. 38% of Americans in 2000 thought that saying that publicly, I should get fined for that. Okay? There's lots of American citizens who are not for freedom. I don't know where they came from, but they exist. So, I think Alex Jones, I like how he gets pissed off at American citizens, because this is the kind of stuff that he's talking about. But I think our government, they're just our citizens. Not to try to make it seem like it's the government that's worse than the citizens. But let's see where the trends go, because I think I forgot to talk about that. Well, people are becoming, it doubled. It went from 23 to 41 about the musicians being allowed to sing songs. And I strongly disagree, went from 31 down to 23. So people are definitely moving towards the direction of freedom. And I think that should be noted, because a lot of people are like implying or say that we're becoming a police state, and we're actually going in the other direction. We're not becoming a police state. People are becoming more and more freedom-loving. And that should be kept in mind. I think Alex Jones forgets to say that. People should be allowed to say things in that might be religious, offensive to religious groups. Strongly agree. Well, that went up from 22 to 31. Gradually. It went up from 38. And then strongly disagree, it went down from 38 to 27. So this one too, going towards freedom. Okay, people should be allowed to say things that might be offensive to racial groups. Okay, the least politically correct thing to do. Only 8%. Well, I'm in this 8%. I strongly agree because, like I said, there's a wide range of things that might be offensive to a racial group. I could say gooks because I think the word sounds cool, but people are going to become offended by that, obviously. So then I should be fined for that? I shouldn't be allowed to say that? That wouldn't work because I wouldn't have meant anything by it. It's just me saying a word. And you can use these laws to get people into trouble and piss people off and throw people in jail and cause wars. You need to allow people to say stuff, and then people can just go, oh, phooey, he said that and I can't do anything. And then he can go and take a cold shower or something. Mildly agree, 15. So 23%, a quarter, would agree with that. But most people strongly disagree. People should not be allowed to say things in public that might be offensive to racial groups. You can't say that? Oh my God. Yeah, so, you know, it kind of makes me think if people are like hiring, you know, armies of people to throw other people in concentration camps, they will be able to find those armies of people because they exist. Those kinds of people exist in droves in America. But people that changed a lot. It went up by like threefold here. From 97 to 2006, people became more and more. So now, I'm sorry, I wasn't in the 8th percentage. I was 22, more than a fifth. And the number of the strongly disagrees went way down, so people woke up to freedom a lot on that one, more than any of the other ones. Newspapers should be allowed to publish sensitive and classified information. I agree, that's the whole Julian Assange WikiLeaks thing. Should be allowed to publish. I'm in this group here. 12% should be allowed to publish only when wrongdoing. Only 15% of the people thought that newspapers should be allowed to publish something that the government did wrong. That sounds totally nuts to me. Crazy people. Well, I'm proud to be in the small 15%. Should not be allowed to publish, 35%. More than a third think that they should not be allowed to publish. Newspapers should honor government's requests to withhold information that might hurt the war on terrorism. Newspapers should honor government's requests. Well, that is a free will thing. Most people would strongly agree with that. Where do I go that might hurt the war on terrorism? Well, I don't think there is any information that might hurt the war on terrorism. So it's a very vague question. But since it's a free will thing, I would just go ahead and mildly disagree. Because it's such a loaded question. But I definitely don't strongly agree like most people. Okay. Even during wartime, the press should be allowed to publish stories that criticizes... Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to go to strongly disagree. Yeah. Anyways. Even during wartime, the press should be allowed to publish stories that criticize the actions of the government. Well, I strongly agree. Strongly agree. To keep the people in line with what's going on. Because people in the press are educated. They know what's going on. They talk to people. And we have a history of going into really bad wars and doing stupid things, so I strongly agree. Well, luckily I'm in the big group on that. But you do get these people who strongly disagree. Should not be allowed to criticize. Even during wartime, political candidates should be allowed to criticize the actions of government while campaigning. Well, obviously. And I'm appalled that it's only 45%. If anybody is going to be encouraged and allowed to criticize the government, it should be the freaking political candidates, obviously. But you get these people strongly disagree. 18%, almost a fifth. No, they should not. They're a candidate. They shouldn't be allowed to criticize the government. They should just do what the government says because they're a candidate. Okay, go back to England then. Are war protesters un-American? Well, I think they're American. But here's all the reasons. Yep. Anyways, for and against. Okay, so that's that. Now, First Amendment, I think the world is getting it's becoming a lot freer, as our poll already said. But we can also see that by the actual First Amendment cases that are seen. They get more and more ridiculous as you go farther back in time. And this is the list of Supreme Court cases that we have had. There have been a grand total of 61 Supreme Court cases. The most recent one in 1995, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and the earliest one was in 1919. So they don't happen that often, and they didn't get started until recently for some reason. I guess, because of newspapers and stuff, it just wasn't all that necessary. People could say whatever they wanted in private, and I guess that's one reason some people could use as to why we should clamp down on freedoms, is because, TV and stuff and computer, internet didn't exist in the day of the Founding Fathers, but in my opinion, the First Amendment is pretty dang simple. And there it is, right there, black and white. We have our freedoms. So anyways, let's have a ganders at all the Supreme Court cases. Over here, oh yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but yeah, I have the 300 pixel columns. Anyways, and if you do want to look at some Supreme Court stuff, there are links. You have the First Amendment Center.org to help you talk about it or whatever. Center for Safe and Responsible Internet Use, American Civil Liberties Union, American Library Association, National School Board Association, current First Amendment issues that are going on, if you can find out what that is. Acts, Children's Internet Protection Act, Deleting Online Predators Act, the Establishment Act. Religious clauses. Now they do like to, as far as freedom of speech and religion goes, they do have it into two different clauses. The prohibition of the establishment of national religion, and the preference of one religion over another you can do, and then free exercise to believe and to act. So, yeah. Okay. So over here, there's 3 Supreme Court cases involving students. A lot of them involve teachers and students. 3 in the Supreme Court, and a whole bunch of them in state courts. And it's really interesting to look at these because people, Alex Jones takes it too far. He and a lot of other people seem to think that we're heading towards a police state, and it's obviously that we're not. We're heading out of a police state. We're heading towards freedom. These kinds of stuff these kinds of cases that happened in the past would not happen again. These are just straight up ridiculous. this stuff, and let's talk about it. Okay, so, but then we have government, freedom of religion. A lot of them have to do with religion. All that whole suppression of religion from Europe got carried all the way over to America. Government intervention in church controversies. There's like 4 of them. For exercise of religion, a lot of them involving Jehovah's Witness cases, maybe like 10 of those. Conscientious objection to war, a whole bunch of those, like 8 of them. Religion and the right to work, like half dozen of those. Religious tests for public service or benefits, 4 of those. Free exercise and free speech, 1. Free exercise and public education, like 5. Whole bunch of them are involving public education. Free exercise and public property, because that's where minds are made, you know. That's the breeding ground. Okay. Free exercise and taxation, solicitation by religious groups, free exercise in eminent domain, outlawing of religious sacrifice, the establishment of religion, standing to sue, tax exemption to religious institutions, Sunday work, religious institution functioning as a government agency, unequal government treatment of religious groups, legislative chaplains, government-sponsored nativity scenes, government aid to public education, government aid to church-related schools also is big. Government aid is a big one. Prayer in public schools, teaching of creationism in public schools. Okay. Now, let us start by doing a simple timeline of First Amendment cases, okay? And I'll tell you what I think about each and every one of those. Okay, number 1, Schenck versus United States, 1919. Now, if you wanted to, every single one of these in red, you can see the actual link to it. If you're particularly interested in it, just click on it, and it'll bring up the details of that particular case. So, and here we are. It was just got brotened up right about now on wikipedia.org, Schenck versus United States. And it's a pretty long story. Court's decision, background of the case, subsequent jurisprudence, and then links. So, good old stuff with the lowdown down yonder. Okay, but let's talk about it. We can figure, as far as I'm concerned, I can know everything that's about it right here. So, concerning a conspiracy, Schenck versus the United States, 1919, concerning a conspiracy to obstruct the draft process. Somebody said somebody was trying to stop people from the government from being able to draft people. The court held that Schenck's criminal conviction was constitutional. I disagree. He should be able to petition the government against the draft, and especially a draft. You don't draft people into the army. They don't want to go. And that was after World War I ended anyways. So anyways, Gitlow versus the people. 1925. Concerning the limits of protection of the First and 14th Amendments with regard to public safety and to the integrity of the state. Okay. Oh man, I can't remember what the 14th Amendment is. It's similar. The court upheld the state law. Okay. Regard to public safety and the integrity of the state. Okay, I don't know about that. I'll have to read into it. Whitney versus California, 1927. Concerning the jurisdiction of a state court over federal questions. Court sustained Whitney's conviction. Okay, well this is state versus government stuff, so I don't know. Neer versus Minnesota, concerning the regular publication of newspapers or magazines thought to be malicious. The court held that the statute unconstitutional. Obviously. that goes back to freedom of the press, and it's ridiculous that, you see, that's a good thing that we have a republic and we have that we have a constitution and we have the First Amendment that is so clear. It is so clear and succinct and small. And it's good that we have that to protect us from these fools at Minnesota. But nevertheless, people obviously are always going to try to challenge that by being stupid and not knowing that the First Amendment exists. Stromberg versus California, 1931, concerning the display of a red flag in California, which is an illegal act. Okay, the court ruled 7-2 that a 1919 Californian statute banning red flags was unconstitutional. Thank God for the Supreme Court. And who are these two retards? The Supreme freaking Court. You got some morons in the Supreme Court back in 31. It's a red flag. That's dressing. Okay. Grosjean versus American Press Company. You see, this is the kind of thing that would never happen in today's society. They would never do that. And this is why we're getting more and more free. Grosjean versus American Press Company, Incorporated, 1936, concerning the types of taxes that may be levied against owners of newspapers. The court, in a unanimous decision, found the tax to be unconstitutional. Okay. Okay. Yeah, don't tax newspapers. I agree with that. I should have written I agree. Dead Johns versus Oregon, concerning criminal punishment for participation in public meetings, even if peaceable, because the sponsoring group advocates violence or popular uprising. The court found that Dirk DeJohn had the right, and I agree, because even if peaceful, doesn't matter that it's peaceful, because there's people who agree with him who have advocated violence, you know. Just because my brother killed somebody doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. That's ridiculous. So thank God for the Supreme Court. Hague versus Committee for Industrial Organization, 1939, concerning the ability of municipal officers to enforce the ordinances forbidding the distribution of printed matter. The court, and I didn't see but my decision on that one is, no, don't have ordinances forbidding the distribution of printed matter. That is freedom of press, which is freedom of speech. And I really seriously doubt we would have to deal with anything that ridiculous in this day and age. Cantwell versus Connecticut, 1940, concerning the state enactment of any law respecting religion. The court found that Cantwell's action was protected. Well, yes, you need to respect somebody's religion and let them do it, obviously. Thornhill versus Alabama, concerning the loitering or picketing about a lawful business to affect commerce. The court reversed the conviction. So they convicted somebody for loitering and picketing somebody's business and affecting their commerce. Well, that goes to slander, and I don't know much about slander, but as long as you picket and you say something that somebody did, you know, like he overcharged me for this or he didn't give me the refund, then that's legal and that's fine. So I agree with the court to reverse the conviction. If you stand in front of somebody and say that this guy is a demon worshiper and he's a hell bag, scumbag, and you just call him names and you don't say anything that he did, and you don't use any examples, then I would not object to people removing him because he's just being a pain in the ass. And he's a moron, and maybe they should put him in a mental institution. People should be use their brains or get out of town. Okay. Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, 1942, concerning verbal insults in public places. The court ruled that obscenity and fighting words do not convey ideas and thus are not subject to First Amendment protection. Yeah, you know what, I would agree with that. Because somebody could go totally crazy, you know, because they're just filled with hate and they decide that they don't like somebody, and then they could just ruin somebody's life by just yelling at them and standing in front of their house. And it's like the restraining order thing, you know? And people should be protected against crazy people by law. So I agree with that. Marsh versus Alabama. Concerning the distribution of religious literature on a sidewalk. The court ruled in a 5-3 decision, ruled in favor of Marsh. Well, obviously, he should be able to distribute his religious literature on a sidewalk. It's public property, obviously. But 3 of the Supreme Court people voted against it. So, you know, people in the Supreme Court have been divided a lot. I mean, 6-2 on this one. So it's a wonderful thing. We live in a world where people disagree, but we should all be allowed to disagree, not just people in the Supreme Court. But anyways, let's continue. The 13th one out of 52 or whatever. Dennis versus United States. Concerning the criminality of anyone knowingly advocating the overthrow of the United States. Court ruled in a 6-2 decision, upheld the convictions of the Communist Party leaders. Okay. I disagree with this. This goes under the showing your grievances. They were showing their grievances. And advocating the overthrow, well, that's stupid what they're saying. I don't agree with what they're saying, but they should be allowed to say it. So I would have been in the 2 here, and I'm glad that there were 2. Okay. Joseph Bernstein Incorporated versus Wilson. Concerning the First Amendment protection of free speech in films. The court, it determined that certain provisions of the New York education law allowing a censor to forbid the commercial showing of any non-licensed motion picture film or revoke or deny the license of a film deemed sacrilegious was a restraint on freedom of speech, and I agree. I mean, who has the right to say something is sacrilegious? I could make a video of myself walking around naked and upload it to Daily Motion, and some fundamentalist could tell me that that's sacrilegious. So, no, I agree with the court on that. Roth versus United States, 1957, number 15, concerning the mailing of obscene materials. The court, in a 6-3 decision, held that obscenity was not within the area of constitutionally protected speech or press, and I strongly disagree with that. I am one of these 3 Supreme Court judges. I mean, this is naked people. God made the body, and he's mailing it. He was probably mailing it to somebody who didn't want to have it, but you know, if you know it comes from the same person, don't look at it. You know, that's like somebody going into my YouTube page and saying, "Oh no, you said fag. Oh no, I'm going to report you and try and get your thing taken down." You know, it's going to be one of these people. One of these really ultra-conservative people who exist in a third of America. Okay. So, I disagree with the court on number 15. Number 16, Communist Party of the United States versus Subversive Watkins versus United States. Okay? So, concerning witnesses before Congress refusing to answer questions. Refusing to answer questions. The court decided 6-1 to overturn Watkins' conviction. And I agree. I don't think that you should convict the guy because he refuses to answer questions. You should just convict him for what he's accused of, and because he's not defending himself, then too bad for him. But you don't convict him for not answering a question. That's adding taxes for nothing. Okay, number 17. Let's stop the video and we'll do a part 2 later. Okay, part 2. Number 17, the 17th Supreme Court case. In 1957, Yates versus United States, concerning the teaching of communist principles. The court ruled that the Smith Act did not prohibit advocacy of forcible overthrow of the government as an abstract doctrine. Okay, I'm a little bit confused about this. Convert the teaching of communist principles. The court ruled that the Smith Act, okay, I guess the Smith Act was an act that made it illegal to distribute communist pamphlets trying to overthrow the government. And the court ruled that it did not prohibit the advocacy. I didn't write this right. But anyways, I agree. I say that they should be able to write that stuff. That's freedom of speech right there. And you know, and one interesting thing to talk about this is imagine somebody used freedom of speech and freedom of press to spread information to forcibly overthrow the government, and they managed to forcibly overthrow the government because of that. Well, they're breaking the law by doing that, and so then you would expect them to just continue to break laws and do whatever they want, and probably not allow other people to have any freedom of speech. But I don't think that they would get away with doing that. Anyways, it's not something to worry about. But I'm still trying to figure out what the Supreme Court ruled on this. I should have looked at this a little bit more, but I think the court ruled that the act did not prohibit okay, so I guess I agree with the Supreme Court on that. Number 18, the Communist Party versus Activities Control, 1961, concerning the registration of the Communist Party of the United States as a communist action organization. The court found that the Communist Party of the United States was a communist action organization within the meaning of the act, and ordered it to register as such under whatever, number 7. Okay. So sure, make them register. I don't see what that has to do with freedom of speech. Okay. Number 19. Scales versus United States, 1961, concerning membership of organizations which advocate the overthrow of the United States. The court, in a 5-4 decision, the court upheld that the Security Act protects per se members of an organization from criminal prosecution, and thank God for that. I agree. Strongly agree. I'm one of the 5. You need to protect those people. It's interesting that you had so many people trying to overthrow the United States, though. Okay, Edward versus South Carolina, 1963, number 20, concerning the arrest of peaceful demonstrators for criminal conduct. The court held that the arrests and convictions violated the rights of the marchers. Well, obviously, I agree. Thank you for the court. That is peaceful assembly, and people's rights, even up to 1963, the year that Kennedy died, were being violated. It's crazy to think about, but they're still doing it now, which is even crazier to think about. Okay. Number 21, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People versus Button in 1963, concerning the enforcement of a state statute that violates the 14th Amendment. Okay, I don't know off the top of my head what the 14th Amendment is right now, but the court, in the unanimous court, held that the activities of the NAACP amounted to modes of expression and association protected by the First and 14th Amendment. Thank God for that. I agree strongly. Jacobellis versus Ohio, 1964, concerning censorship of films deemed to be obscene. The U.S. Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, I need to fix this page. I thought I did a million times. Reversed the conviction. Well, thank you. Of course, reverse the conviction. Deemed to be obscene by who and why? Obscene? Give me a break. Okay. New York Times versus Sullivan. 1964, number 23. Concerning awards due in libel cases concerning intent. The court held that the First Amendment protects the publication of all statements, even false ones, about the conduct of public officials, except when statements are made with actual malice, with knowledge that they are false, or in reckless disregard of their truth or falsity. Under this new standard, Civilian case collapsed. Okay, so I agree that they should be able to say all states, even false ones, because you don't know if you're right. Now, as far as saying something that's malicious, if it's under the grounds of encroaching on somebody's quality of life, you know, like sending them so much mail that they literally can't walk out of their house, which I don't see how that could happen anymore. Well, you want to protect the person, but somebody like lying, I think people should, and so I definitely disagree with the Supreme Court on this. I think people should definitely be allowed to spread information that they know to be false, because if they do that, if a lot of people end up doing that, then it will make people a lot more willing, and it will motivate people to use reasoning and examples and proving and speaking in a way that is honest in order to make people believe you. They'll take frivolous banter a lot less seriously, and people will be more serious about having an intelligent conversation if people are actually allowed to say whatever they want and just lie. People would require proof, and people don't require proof these days nearly as much as they should. They said they killed Osama bin Laden, but there's no picture, and everybody's dancing in the streets. And I think that's totally ridiculous that people are dancing in the streets when there's no picture, when it could be easy. And they're like, oh, but it's gruesome. Yeah, everybody's seen gruesome pictures. Show us those pictures, you know. People wouldn't be so gullible if people were allowed to spread lies. That's my opinion. Okay. Number 24, Cox versus Louisiana, 1965, concerning the content and location of a civil rights protest. The court held that these could not sustain a breach of the peace conviction either. The constitutional rights of freedom of speech and assembly could not be denied because of hostility to their assertion or exercise. I agree. Your freedom of speech and assembly cannot be denied. Yeah, those civil rights protesters were allowed to do what they're doing, and the G8 protesters should be allowed to hang out in the streets in droves and not have their eardrums blasted out. Okay, that's crazy what they do. Okay, Cox versus Louisiana, 1965, the 25th. Concerning related issues to the previous case, the court, whoops, man, What happened to this? I thought I fixed this. Okay, well, anyways, I hope they deemed the same thing that they deemed before in the name of freedom. Zemel versus Rusk, 1965, concerning a citizen's request for a visa to Cuba. The court found that restrictions to travel, if made in a non-discriminatory fashion, were valid in the interests of national security. And I agree. I said that I agree. The court found that restrictions to travel, if made in a non-discriminatory fashion, were valid in the interest of national security. Actually, I disagree. I don't know why I said that I agree. Okay, back. First Amendment. The 27th First Amendment case to go to the Supreme Court is called a book named John Cleland's Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure versus Attorney General of Massachusetts in 1966, concerning obscenity in a book. The court ruled that some forms of expression, among them obscenity and fighting words, do not convey ideas and thus are not subject to First Amendment protection. In this case, Kaplinsky uttered fighting words, i.e. fighting words inflicting injury or tend to incite an immediate breach of peace. Okay, I would agree with the Supreme Court if that was in a real life type of a situation, but as we can see, it is a freaking book, fictional for entertainment purposes, therefore he should have the right to publish the book. Of course, this shows us how much we have progressed, because we have that kind of stuff in movies all the time, so we are progressing, aren't we? 28th case, 1967, Kurdish Publishing Company versus Butts, concerning libel by a reporter against a football coach accusing of fixing a game. The court held that while news organizations were protected from liability when printing allegations about public officials, they may still be sued by public figures if the information they disseminate is recklessly gathered and unchecked. Okay, I guess I should have put some more details about this, but to just give my ideas about it. Okay, against a football coach accused of fixing a game. He was held for liable because he alleged something. I don't know. That's a good one. I guess I should write some more details on that. Okay. Number 29, Cation versus Board of Regents in 1967, concerning State University of New York teachers dismissed for refusing to certify that they were not communists. The court versus the Supreme Court, man, I need to fix this. The Supreme Court struck the New York rules down, citing their vagueness. Okay, so they voted against the state. So they were for Cation. Against the teachers, for the regents. Hold on, let me look at this. I should have looked at this before. Okay, I should have fixed this. But anyways, I would obviously go for the teachers. This is ridiculous. That McCarthyism. People should be allowed to be in any political group that they want to. Some different people have different ideas about what communism is, and communism in Eastern Europe is bad, but it's the idea of socialism that these people calling themselves communists, which they shouldn't have done, they should have called themselves socialists, is what they were trying to espouse. And yeah, any group should be allowed to participate. And if the communists end up taking over and they becoming like the communists that the Americans don't like, then they're kind of they're being hypocrites, because they're using freedom of speech to take over and then shutting out freedom of speech. And then you could use that to show how they were being ridiculous. But whereas if you allow them to just be communists, and then they're not gonna ever be a threat to our system, because people would just compare these communists with the communists in Eastern Europe and say that we don't like that, and they're never going to be powerful. So this is just fear, fear, being afraid that they're going to take over, when in reality there's no way that they could. 30th case, United States versus O'Brien, 1968, concerning the burning of draft cards. The court established a test to determine whether governmental regulation involving symbolic speech was justified. Okay. I don't know what that means. That's vague. But anyways, of course, they should be able to allow the burning of draft cards. Because the government could just issue new draft cards. It's your card. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it, man. Jesus. And the draft is I bet you it's unconstitutional. I don't know how, but it's wrong. So. Number 31, Stanley versus Georgia, 1969, concerning the possession of obscene films. The court held that the First and 14th Amendment prohibited making private possession of obscene materials a crime. Well, thank God for that, and I agree. You should be able to have pictures of naked people in your house without being thrown in jail. As we've seen, there have been a whole lot of Supreme Court cases having to do with nudity. People have a big problem with that, with nudity. And luckily, every time it's been shot down, and we can maintain our freedoms of being nudity. Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School, 1969, concerning the suspension of students who wore black armbands protesting a police action in Vietnam. Now, this is obviously the right to petition your government clause. So the court wearing of armbands was closely akin to pure speech and protected by the First Amendment. So we do have some smart people even in 1969 in the Supreme Court, but some stupid people controlling schools. Our educational system, the number one reason that our educational system is screwed up, and we're going to talk about this on the right column, is because you have control freaks in the educational system trying to pump out a bunch of mindless followers who just do what they're told. And it's not about education. It's about just doing what you're told, doing what you're told, doing what you're told. And I have videos talking about that, but luckily our Supreme Court has shot these control freaks down. And it's another reason why I think America does so well, being such a large country protected by a constitution. Because if we were a bunch of little states, each state being a different country, the retards could go to the control freaks could go to these various little states and start control freak countries, and make all these laws against possessing pornography and all the other little things, drugs and all that kind of stuff. And so we have a nice big country with a big constitution protecting everybody. And the states, a lot of the states make the stupid decisions, so then it goes to the Supreme Court, where the smart people are, and they override it and help us keep our freedom. So thank God for that. Number 33, Cohen versus California, 1971, concerning a state attempting to make the expression of four-letter words a criminal offense. The court protected two elements of speech: the emotive expression of emotion and the cognitive expression of ideas. Yes, both emotive and cognitive expression is perfectly fine. You can get out there and be whatever that problem is where you go fuck, fuck, fuck. Yes, that's freedom of speech, obviously. So thank God for the Supreme Court in 1971, and whoa, have we come a long time in the 40 years since then. 34th case, Rosenblum versus Metro Media, 1971, concerning libel stemming from a radio news broadcast of an arrest using pejorative language. So somebody said poopy on the internet or on the radio and got arrested for that. Oh my God. The court upheld an appeals court ruling that even though a news broadcast contains information about a private citizen, it is not liable unless the plaintiff can demonstrate a reckless disregard for the truth or malicious intent. This is what it's about right here. You can say whatever you want unless you start threatening to hurt somebody physically. And then you should step in to try to prevent that crime. But other than that, yes, of course, you can say whatever pejorative language you want. So I agree with the court on that one. Grayned versus City of Rockford, concerning the permissible levels of noise of a person on grounds adjacent to a school building. The court held that the anti-picketing ordinance was overboard and was therefore invalid. That the anti-noise ordinance, which prohibited only noise that took place near public schools and might disrupt school activity, was valid, and therefore Graynard's conviction under the anti-picketing ordinance was reversed, while his conviction under the anti-noise ordinance was upheld. And I agree with that. He must allow the kids to be able to concentrate without hearing noise in their ears. But just because it's close to your school, you should be able to do whatever you want. The school grounds is the school grounds and not across the street from the school grounds. 36th case, Police Department versus Mosley, 1972. Concerning picketing at any school involved in labor disputes, the court held that the exemption for labor picketing violated the Equal Protection Clause. Okay, I don't know what the Equal Protection Clause is, but exemption of labor picketing. So people should be able to do labor picketing, because it's supposed to protect people who wish to do that. It violated the protection clause. I don't know what the protection clause is, so I'm going to have to not be kind of vague on this. I wish I knew, and one day I will learn. But people should be allowed to picket at a school if you're a student. I do agree that people who aren't students should be not allowed to enter the school and disrupt school activities. So anyways, 37th case, Gertz versus Robert Welch, Incorporated, 1974, concerning the defamation of public officials in the public media. Now, for some reason, I don't know what they did, what they ruled, but yeah, people should be able to defame public officials in the public media. You can draw a picture of a naked Mohammed or a Barack Obama dressed like Osama bin Laden. That's just people being silly and expressing their freedom of speech. Number 38, Jenkins versus Georgia, 1974, concerning the conviction of a man for showing the film Carnal Knowledge in a movie theater. The court held that the Georgia Supreme Court misapplied the obscenity test announced in Miller versus California in 1973. Okay, so misapplied the obscenity test. Okay, I don't know what the obscenity test, and I should have written what that was, but I think people should be able to play whatever they want in a movie theater. Those people who go into the movie theater and watch the movie, it's by their own decision, and therefore, you know, and I'll get a little bit sidetracked here and start talking about YouTube. I think people should be able to upload any kind of video on YouTube as they want to, because when people watch the video, they do that on their own decision, and if they don't like the video, they can turn the video off. And you know, YouTube still has a lot of is a slave to the FCC. You know, you can't say fuck on YouTube. Well, you can, but you can't write it, and you can't write a lot of other four-letter words. And if you say fuck, you can't be a partner. You can't make money with ads on YouTube. And I think that's wrong, because people choose who they're going to be ads with, and if they don't, then, well, you can't blame them for somebody saying fuck. And besides, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with saying fuck. People say it anyways. Saying it and then bleeping it out, you're still saying it, so it's ridiculous.
As far as nudity, I think nudity should be allowed on YouTube as well because it's natural. God made the human body. Number 39, Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976, concerning limits to campaign contributions. The court held, I don't know what the court held, I didn't get this far. I guess I gave up after 38. So let's just talk about these from now on, and then I'll come back to this later. Okay. Limits to campaign contributions. Well, I think people should be able to contribute whatever they want. There should be no limits to campaign contributions. You know, if people are stupid enough to vote for somebody just because they have their face all over the newspaper and the TV, then let the people do that. Nevertheless, you should be able to allow anybody to run for any office without having to pay any kind of a fine. It should be free to run for every single office, so that you don't have to have money. You can sign up and run. And then you can get yourself out there just by simply having your name up there, and then they can watch your YouTube videos. So that's that. 40, Greek versus Spock, 76, concerning the distribution of political materials on federal military reservations. Yes, of course you can distribute political materials on federal reservations, and I'm sure the court ruled for that. 41, Young versus American Mini Theaters, concerning zoning restriction for movie theaters. Okay, I think movie theaters should be able to go anywhere, even if it's right across the street from a kiddie place. The kiddie place is the kiddie place. That's just me. You know, the little kiddie school. You should be able to have marijuana dispensaries right across the street from grade schools. Okay. Young versus Central Hudson Gas and Electric Corporation versus Public Service Communication Board, Community. I shouldn't have hyphenated that. Concerning censorship of advertising, there should be no censorship of advertising. If somebody wants to advertise something, and they you know, it's free market. If people don't like it, then they cannot buy your product, and then you can suffer that way. But you don't need the government to step in on that. 43, Prune Yard Shopping Center versus Robbins, 1980, concerning petition in privately owned grounds. No, you should not be able to petition on privately owned ground. It's somebody's private property. Now, concerning how we're going to define what private property is, that's a completely other matter, another thing. Okay, 44. For example, schools aren't private property. They're public grounds for the kids who go there. So if you're a student at a school, you should be able to do whatever the hell you want. Unless you're not a student, and then you should stay out. Okay. Heffron versus International Society for Krishna Consciousness, concerning the distribution of any materials, including merchandise, at fairgrounds. Yes, they should be able to distribute the materials in a fairground, unless the fairground is private property, and then the people who own it can ask you to leave. Brown versus, I mean, legally they can ask you to leave. I don't think they should, but of course, you know, if they're trying to make money and they feel like they're losing business, you know, they should be able to ask you to leave. Brown versus Hartledge, concerning the nature of campaign promises. Well, you know, people should be able to say whatever they want in their campaign if they end up lying in their campaign, just like Barack Obama did, and concerning the troops, reducing troop count. Just don't vote for the guy again. That's why you have term limits. New York versus Ferber, 1982, 46 case, concerning the distribution of material promoting underage sex. The court found that the state's interest in preventing sexual exploitation of minors was compelling government objective of surpassing importance. The law was carefully drawn to protect children from the mental, physical, and sexual abuse associated with pornography while not violating the First Amendment. All right, let me read this again. Promoting underage sex. Okay. Yeah, there is a law that you're not allowed to have sex under the age of 18, which I think is stupid because human beings have always had sex before they've been getting married. I think with Catholicism it's at 15, and girls can have babies at 13, so you don't want to make a law against natural It's what's natural and always happened. So, and that's not sexual exploitation. That's just, well, promoting underage sex. You're not really exploiting them. Some people might say you're twisting their arm, but that's, I think by the time you're old enough to do something physically, then you should be given the responsibility to do that. Um, and yes, I think people should be allowed to drink alcohol at a younger age as well. We should bring those ages down to about 15. People are getting more and more mature as we move forward in time anyways. So, and by not treating people like adults until they're 21, they're never, if they're not an adult by the time they're 21, as far as I'm concerned, they never will be, and they'll just be wanting to have these laws telling them what to do for the rest of their lives. So, okay, so I guess the court ruled agreeing with me on that. Okay, let's continue. Global Newspaper Company versus Superior Court, 1982, concerning the limits of press coverage of sexual offenses involving victims under the age of 18. The court held that the Massachusetts law violated the First Amendment. So I guess the Massachusetts law was prohibiting the press coverage of sexual offenses involving a victim under the age of 18. And so the Supreme Court said that they should be allowed to cover that. And I agree with the Supreme Court. I think they should be allowed to cover that. If the victim got embarrassed, well, it's the victim who is the victim, not the perpetrator. So, and you would think that the victim would want to embarrass the perpetrator as much as they could anyways. So, yeah, that's First Amendment is freedom of press. Okay. Number 48, Board of Education versus PICO 1982 concerning the removal of books deemed to be anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-Semitic from public high school and junior high school libraries. Okay, that, I don't know what the court upheld. I bet you the court held that it was unconstitutional to ban those books, and I would agree with that. We have a long history of burning books, and if the school has the books, it's because people ask for the books. That's how capitalism works. Deemed to be anti-American, Christian, Semitic, deemed by who? By the control freaks? It should be deemed by the people who open those books. Whoever opens a book is responsible for their own mind and that particular book. Don't try to control people and tell them what they can and can't read. And the same goes for the internet, as books are becoming obsolete. 49, Connick versus Myers, 1983, concerning the dismissal of an assistant district attorney for insubordination for questioning the policies of her supervisors. Yes, you should definitely be able to question the policies of your supervisors. That is the clause in the First Amendment that says your right to petition your government for a redress of grievances. Okay. Clark versus Community for Creative Nonviolence, 1984, concerning sleeping in connection with protesters. Yeah, I think you should be able to sleep on the sidewalk in public places. Even on the sidewalk, if it's in front of somebody's house, you should be protected to do that. Some people called the cops on me a few months ago because I was sleeping in my van in front of their house, and because they thought that I was going to, I guess, rob them. And the cops came and they said legally they weren't going to tell me to leave, but they suggested that I leave just to not be a dick, and so I left. So yeah, should be able to sleep wherever you want. Cornelius versus NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, 1985, concerning charitable donations on federal employees. Yes, you should be able to give charitable donations to whoever you want. I guess the reason they don't want to do that is because it's kind of like you're paying federal people off, but we already do that with lobbyists, like that movie with Kevin Spacey, where he goes he's the middleman between the big company and the congressman, and he gives them the money, and that's legal, and should be legal. But it should be. But it should also be. It should be transparent. I think anybody who takes money, if they're a government employee, should have to report it on their website to everybody exactly how much money they, and as well as how much we should report how much money we spend on everything, how much we subsidize the cattle industry, and as well as how much, exactly what they're doing with our Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, 51, Cornelius versus NAACP, Legal Defense and Education Fund, 1985, concerning charitable donations of federal, oh, I just talked about that, didn't I? 52, Hazelwood School District versus Kullmayer, 1988, concerning censorship of a high school newspaper. Do not censor high school newspapers. This is where control and brainless followers are trained. It's in the high school, so you don't want to train people to be brainless followers. You want to train people to feel like they can say whatever they want, and eventually they'll get sick of being idiots and they'll start talking about stuff that's good and positive. So don't feel all threatened if some high school kid, prints a picture of some dude banging a girl in high school. Yeah, let him do that. Massachusetts versus Oaks, concerning a man who photographed his 14-year-old stepdaughter nude, concerning allowable levels of noise from concerts and public parks. Maybe this is a typo. It seems like two different things. Okay, man who photographed his 14-year-old stepdaughter nude. Well, yeah, I think you should photograph your stepdaughter nude. You could photograph whatever you want nude. Now, if you have a photograph, if you took a photograph of somebody else nude and then you put it all over the internet and the person is underage and everything, and they object, I think that's another thing. I actually did do a video talking about child pornography. I was doing this video about what I think about Colleen Thomas, and she said something about against child pornography, and I actually said child pornography is good. And then that of course pissed off some people. But what I meant by that was, if you're like there's this one site, I typed nude beach, and there's one site that I checked out a couple years ago. It's like these hippies up in like Siberia, and they're all hanging out on this beach, and they're all naked, and they have like marijuana leaves painted on their bodies, and it's like adults and little kids, and everybody's naked, and they've even got the website painted on their chest. Now that's all voluntary, and I think that should be cool. And if you get busted for having that, that's not good. I think I've read of stories of two teachers who got like fired from their job and actually thrown in jail because they found like child porn on their computer. And my question is, well, how the hell did they find it on the computer? You should get, that's interfering with somebody's privacy, and that's just a way to bust people. I mean, you could plant that kind of stuff on somebody's computer. If you have that law, you could plant it on somebody's computer with the technology we have these days, and then find it, and then go in there and find it, and then get them arrested. It's just another tool for busting people. And people do that kind of stuff, and if you allow people to do that stuff legally, they're going to do it. There's a story that this judge said where these people gave this 86-year-old librarian a note that said, federal investigators are here, and she said, what's this? I can't read your writing, I don't know what this is. And she handed it to her assistant, like, throw this away or something. And the assistant took it. So then they go, aha, we got you. We're going to throw you in jail for 5 years because you told somebody else that there's federal investigators in this library. So they obviously she didn't know what she was doing, but because she had the piece of paper, so just take that law away, and then you're not going to get these dirtbags, these scumbags, taking advantage of the law in order to just throw people in jail. And people have done that in the past, so just get rid of that whole child porn laws. Okay, 55, United States versus Etchman, 1990, concerning burning of the United States flag. Yes, you should be able to burn a United States flag. You shouldn't steal somebody else's flag and burn that, because that's theft. But yes, you can burn whatever you want. 50. That's addressing the government for grievances. Okay, 56. Osborne versus Ohio, 1990, concerning the possession of materials showing a minor in a state of nudity. Well, you already know what I think about that. If the minor is smiling and they're getting their picture taken, and there you go. 57, routine. Besides, somebody feeling like really like paranoid about that, that's their problem. And it's a problem that they shouldn't have, because that's just superstition, and we should move out of the world of superstition, feeling like, you're taking your soul if somebody like knows what you look like naked or something like that. 57, Rutan versus Republican Party of Illinois, 1990, concerning the political nature of a state government hiring freeze. The court held that Governor Thompson's practices amounted to an unconstitutional patronage system. Okay, so maybe they freezed hiring so that he could hire somebody else. Yeah, definitely. I agree with the court on that. They should not allow the scumbags to do tricky shenanigans in order to hire who they want. 58, Rust versus Sullivan, 1991, concerning the use of federal funds for family planning, which advised patients of the possibility of abortion. The court held that should government subsidize one protected family, or one protected right, family planning, as it does in this case, it does not follow that government must subsidize analogous counterpart rights, abortion services. Yeah, the government should be able to subsidize whoever they want. Don't you hire your politicians into office based on what they believe, and they make their beliefs clear, and then you hire them in to make the decisions for everybody, and then they make those decisions. You're kind of losing if you make a law saying that you could fund both things. That's just too much money you're spending and too much red tape. However, I think abortion services and family planning, even if it seems like they're the same thing, they do the same thing, but I believe in both of those. I think that abortion, Planned Parenthood, I think that's good that it is publicly funded, because people voluntarily use that, where their lives would be destroyed by having to raise somebody who they don't want. And we have enough people in the world anyways. Okay, 59, Dawson versus Delaware, 1992, considering the admission of a defendant's personal beliefs if they are irrelevant to the case. Well, no, I don't think you should admit anything. Include everything, even if it is irrelevant to the case. It's up to the person who judges to decide that. The judge should not include something. I mean, include a decision about somebody, like think that somebody is a scumbag just because in the past they, maybe they have they did something weird in the past. But admitting stuff, it just makes it way too confusing as to what's irrelevant and irrelevant. Just include everything. Okay, 60, Lamb's Chapel versus Center Morich's Union Free School District, 1993, concerning the use of public school property for religious meetings. Yeah, I think people should be able to use public school property for religious meetings. If there's an opening in the auditorium of a school, let anybody use it, because there's no victim there. Nobody's going to be raising their hand saying, "Oh, but we wanted to use that." So let anybody use it. And religious people are good. Religious people, they become religious so that they can try to become better people. So I think that goes for that's the government shall make no law abridging the rights to religions clause at the beginning. So 61, Rosenberger versus Rector and Visitors of the University of Virginia, 1995, concerning the distribution of student funds at a state university to groups with religious publications. Yeah, don't give student funds to groups with religious publications. That's the clause. Government shall not favor one religion over another. Certain religions, it's up to you to get your own constituency to pay for it. Don't get the government to pay for you. Okay, so now let's go over to the other column. those are all of the 61 Supreme Court cases that have ever existed, according to my thing here, from 1919 until 1995. Okay, so now let's talk about these ones. Important cases: students versus school. There have been 3 Supreme Court cases involving students. Tinker versus Des Moines District, 1969. Students who wore black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Yes, you should be able to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Bethel School District versus Fraser. Students suspended for making vulgar comments. Firm in the pants, take you to the climax at a school assembly. The court ruled that the student's First Amendment rights were not violated when he was suspended. I disagree. We should treat our schools as though they're microcosms to the world at large. You know, we should try to make students feel like they're adults while they're inside of the school, because it would motivate them to act like adults and have ideas about things, adult ideas about things, how much money we should spend on these different programs, and what kind of social laws we should make. And if you're out, and also, so if you're protected by the First Amendment out in the real world, you should also be protected by the First Amendment in the school. So yes, he should be able to say whatever he wants. There's this thing called peer pressure and bullying. And if all the kids in the school didn't like him saying this stuff, the students would take care of him themselves by calling him names and laughing at him. So they were just having a bunch of fun, so I disagree with that. Bring the First Amendment into the schools. Number 3, Hazelwood School District versus Cull-Mayor in 1987. School took out an article about teen pregnancy and divorce. The court ruled that it is okay for a school to edit its newspapers. And I said I disagree. Well, yeah, I disagree if it's the students, and that's what I'm assuming. I mean that it's the teachers. I'm assuming that the teachers jumped in and said, "Oh no, you can't have this." School papers should be controlled by the students. Student papers should be controlled by the students. That's why they're called student papers. Students should not be under the ideas that it's the newspaper where students write the school articles, but only if the teacher likes it. That's a macrocosm of communist, Russia, where the czar is overlooking, or Stalin is making sure that that newspapers can't write stuff that he doesn't like, and he's going to take stuff out. And then kids get out of school, and if they're going to follow that model, where the teachers get to decide what goes, then they're just going to bring that out into the world and be cool with the government telling them what they can and can't write. So, and especially the subject of teen pregnancy and divorce, this is an important subject, so I thoroughly disagree with that. We should bring, like I said, the First Amendment into the schools, and not make the First Amendment suspended as soon as you walk in the school. Lower court cases involving students. Okay, let's talk about Supreme Court of states involving students, because I think education is really important, and there have been a lot of violations of the First Amendment inside of schools. People are trying to train people to become a bunch of followers, mindless followers. Okay, so Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943. Protected students from being forced to salute the American flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I agree. Can you believe it? People were actually forced to salute the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. See, this is where I kind of disagree with Alex Jones. Alex Jones and a lot of conspiracy theorists are saying, oh no, we're heading towards a police state, they're going to take over, and you better watch out, it's getting bad. I agree that we should fight against all the things that people are trying to pass, and I guess he has all these examples of bills that people try to pass, but it's not real until it's real. It's just these, you're always going to have neocons running around trying to control people. But it's not realistic to think that they will, because just look at how this would never happen again. They're not gonna, we don't have any laws, and we wouldn't even think about having any law where you're forced to salute the American flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. This is stuff past. So yeah, we are moving forward. We're not going back. It's kind of hard even to think that that case even could have existed. Watts versus U.S. 69. Petitioners remarked during political debate at small public gathering that if inducted into Army and made to carry a rifle, the first man I want to get in my sights is LBJ, held to be crude political hyperbole, which in light of its context and conditional nature did not constitute a knowing and willful threat against the president, and I agree. He's just some angry dude. Okay. Klein versus Smith, 1986. A high school student made a vulgar gesture to a teacher off campus in after-school hours. School officials suspended the student for 10 days for vulgar or extremely inappropriate language or conduct directed to a staff member. The student sued, claiming that the suspension violated his First Amendment of free rights, and the court sided with the student, and I agree. See, this is part of the problem with education that I've talked about in other videos, and I'm going to talk about a little bit right here. And I think teachers should not be able to judge students. We need to get rid of grades, completely get rid of grades. No grading system at all. The only grading having to do with teachers. Teachers are supposed to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to teach. That's to get in front of the class and talk and talk and talk and tell the kids the cool stuff, and then answer questions, and then answer specific questions, and then be a guide, not be a enforcer of the law. Not somebody, oh, I don't like him, I'm going to give him a bad grade so that he gets marginalized and he can't get into a school, and he can't get into this class, and you know, so he feels stupid. And teachers should teach, and then the grading system should be based on tests, and tests only. Tests and papers that they put up on their site, and then they get placed on based on peer review. Which one is the best? Peer review as in everybody who's ever read it. And if you want somebody to get into a competitive school, the schools can just look at their sites and read their papers, and yeah, so get rid of school, because you're just going to have students not liking teachers. Now you say, oh, but teachers, they need some way to control the students if they can't. And I don't think teachers should be able to I mean, if there's a student in class yelling and screaming and not letting the thing go on, yeah, the teacher should be able to kick them out. But I think every single class should be filmed the whole time, and then you can just show the student screaming and yelling and not letting the class be taught, and it's obvious. So that I just said a lot of stuff there. To recap, you should film every single class that always happens. That should be on the internet, streaming the entire time, and take away grades completely and have them based only on tests, and and just let the students have papers that are voluntary. But you know, if you want to get into a school, you know what you want to do. You want to create stuff and have a personal website. And so this student was probably angry because the teacher was giving him a bad grade. You know. So yeah, of course. It's off campus. Okay. Reno versus ACLU 1997. Brusick versus Woodland. R4 School District 1998. Student made a critical homepage of his school and was suspended for 10 days. The court ruled that it was unconstitutional to suspend him, and I agree. That is a First Amendment, your right to petition the government for your grievances. Freedom of speech, freedom of press. That is a clear violation of the First Amendment, and I bet you the people in the school who suspended that student did not even know what the First Amendment was, and that's why they suspended him. So yeah, we need to get smart people in the school systems. Okay, Nick Emmett versus Kent School District number 415 in 2000 posted mock obituaries of at least two of the plaintiff's friends on a website. He was expelled. The court sided with the student. I agree too. You should be able to do mock obituary of whatever you want. It's the internet is a it should be a free world, and the internet is a place that does not hurt anybody. And this is actually a very controversial subject right now. A lot of people, three people in Spain a couple weeks ago sued Google because um, if you Google like some, I guess, lawyer's name or plastic surgeon's name, you're going to find a story about how he got sued by somebody for doing a bad job, and he was suing and he was saying that Google shouldn't be able to post that stuff about him. I think that Google should be able to post whatever they want. He has, he should be able to. He has the opportunity to defend himself, and he can do that right there on his website. But people should be able to. It's not slander. Slander is if you're standing in front of somebody's business, scaring away customers who are already customers, who are just about to be customers. Um, but but just natural law of karma and of people who go after people and do these defamatory, pictures and stuff about people. It just works its way out. They just look stupid when they do that. And if you allow people to say that kind of stuff, it'll allow people to be able to judge on their own and not and it'll make people feel like they can say whatever they want and not always be like, oh, am I allowed to say that? So it is definitely a controversial subject, which warrants its own webpage for me and video for me. But to put it shortly, yes, I agree. And I'm glad that the court sided with the student. JS versus Bethlehem Area School District in 2000. Student expelled for a website, Teacher Sucks, consisting of several web pages that made derogatory and threatening comments about JS's algebra teacher, Miss Fulmer, and derogatory comments about Nishman principal, Mr. Cardius. The court sided with the student, and I agree. It's a website. It's away from the school. He's not disrupting a class. He's just he's petitioning his government for grievances. If this teacher can't take some criticism, then maybe teacher shouldn't be a teacher. Teachers criticize students all the time, and get angry and yell at teachers, students, and say bad stuff about them, and they can get away with it. And karma is karma. Okay, Coy versus Board of Education of the North Canton City Schools, 2002. Student expelled for a website that contained a section entitled Losers. This section contained a picture of one student with the caption saying his mother had sexually molested him. The court sided with the student, and I agree. Bring the First Amendment into the school with you. Don't become vindictive and make people afraid to express themselves. He's just expressing himself, and we will police ourselves like that anyway. We don't need school officials kicking people out for stuff like that, because the kid who made that website is going to end up making himself look more stupid than the person who he's calling a loser. He's just showing to the world that he has nothing better to do than just to be an asshole and go after people, and he'll eventually be embarrassed about that. So just let him do whatever he wants to do, and don't kick him out. If you kick him out, you'll stop him from being educated, and then he's going to become even stupider. Keep the kids in school. It's so many. The dropout rate is so high now because kids don't like school. And because kids get kicked out, kids get suspended, and then they go, well, fuck this place, I'll just drop out. And then the school's like, oh, oh, dropout rate, kids are so bad these days. Well, don't suspend kids. You suspend somebody, you're going to increase the chance that they're going to drop out. It's pretty freaking simple. Yeah. You want to teach them. You want to keep them coming back. McCaffrey versus Aldry, 2002. A boy sketches violence at his school in his notebook and gets expelled. This court sides with the school, and I disagree. I know that they were probably thinking about, Columbine, where those students went and they shot all kinds of people. But he was just sketching. It's just a sketch. I mean, it's definitely controversial, and I wouldn't be all freaked out if you agreed with the Supreme Court on this, but personally, I think that goes for that violates the First Amendment. You should be able to write whatever you want. U.S. versus ALA 2003 concerning the Children's Internet Protection Act. Whether the Children's Internet Protection Act, CIPA, induces public libraries to violate the First Amendment. I don't know what this Children's Internet Protection Act is, but I bet you it's really stupid, and we should get rid of any of these, in quotes, protection acts. People should be able to put whatever they want on the internet and get whatever they want off the internet. I'm in a library now, and it says if you're under the age, you have the choice to have an internet connection for children that filters out YouTube and all sorts of other stuff, or for adults, and you just click whatever you click. Students, teachers, or parents should be responsible for their children's, not the freaking government. Layshock versus Hermitage School District 2006. Student makes a MySpace page making fun of his principal and is suspended for 10 days. The court sided with the school? That is ridiculous. See, this is an example of lower courts having stupid judges. I don't think the Supreme Court would have made that ruling based on what I saw from those other Supreme Courts. And that's why it's really important that we get some smart people in the Supreme Court. Yeah, don't suspend, you need to bring the First Amendment into the schools. Killian versus Franklin Regional School District 2006. Student suspended for making a website criticizing his school, and I side with the court sided with the student, and I agree. Sounds like these two are very similar. So I agree with this one. Okay, freedom of religion cases, government intervention and church controversies. Okay, now a lot of these have to do with money, and I think we should definitely, separate Caesar, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's. Do not subsidize churches. United States versus Ballard, 1944. Ballard claimed to possess the power to heal people and claims to have had success in doing so in the past. He solicited contributions via mail in exchange for offering his healing abilities. The jury sided with Ballard, and I agree with the jury. He should be able to say whatever he wants. Ketoff versus St. Nicholas Cathedral, 1952. The New York legislature passed a statute transferring control over the church from the Moscow synagogue to American control. The court sided for the Moscow Synod. To American control. Well, yeah, it's don't annex somebody's personal possessions. That belongs to the Moscow Synod. Let them have it. This is 1952, so they did a lot of bad stuff, and McCarthyism. Going after people just because they're communists. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, you should let people be a communist and do it and say whatever they want. It's freedom of speech. It should go without saying. I mean, look at these super controlled, screwed up countries like Stalinistic Europe or Russia and Hitler and in Germany. There's no control. There were no other parties allowed at all. It's just the one party, and that's too similar to the whole McCarthyism, saying, we're only allowed to have Republican and Democrat, no communists. So stupid. Okay, Presbyterian Church versus Hull Church, 1969. Response to the attempts by two Georgia churches to withdraw from control of the U.S. Presbyterian Church. The court sided with the local churches. I would side with the local churches. I think you should be able to withdraw, but what in the hell is the government having to do with this in the first place? Churches should be completely private. And if you want to withdraw and the other guy doesn't want to withdraw, and you're a you're like a franchise, well, then just leave the franchise, you know? Maybe he should have started his own church. I'm just baffled as to how that government is involved in that at all. Jones versus Wolf, 1979, a Presbyterian church had a schism that led to a vote over whether to separate from the national church structure. It was allowed to separate and form its own church. Well, obviously, and what the hell is the government doing involved in that anyway? The free exercise of religion, the Jehovah's Witnesses cases. Cantwell versus Connecticut, 1940, they went door to door with books and pamphlets in a predominantly Roman Catholic street and played a record entitled Enemies, which attacked Catholicism. The court sided with the witnesses. Of course, the witnesses should be able to say whatever they want. Minersville School District versus Golbitz in 1948. The two Jehovah's Witnesses school children, ages 10 and 12, were suspended from school for refusing to salute the American flag. The court ruled against the students. Oh my God, that's insane. We're gonna make you salute the American flag. The government's gonna grab your arm and force you to move that arm. Of course not. You have control over your own body. Cox versus Hampshire, 1941. Groups, see, and this other one. This shows how far we've come, man. You know, Cox versus New Hampshire, 1941. Groups marched along sidewalks displaying signs and handed out leaflets announcing a later meeting. The court upheld their conviction of marching without a license. Okay, well, I think people should be able to march. Now, if a march is the kind of a march that gets in the way of traffic, I think that's bad, because that breaks the law of people walking in the middle of traffic. And if that's what they're talking about, you can get a license to have that kind of a march where you get in front of the traffic, then yeah, you should be able to have a license, and I agree with the court. However, if they're just marching and they're staying on the sidewalk, then of course they should be able to march. And so I disagree with the court on this. I'm going to assume that they weren't marching in the middle of traffic. Jones versus Opelika 1 in 1942. A witness sold books without a license. The court ruled against the witness because it was commercial. Okay. You need a license to sell books? I didn't even know that. I think that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to have a license to sell anything. My God. I'll have to look into that a little bit more, huh? Okay, Jones versus Opelika 2, they had it again. In 43, he gave away the books for voluntary donation. The court ruled that he couldn't charge a flat fee. Well, yeah, I think he should charge a flat fee, but I guess they said he could give it away for a voluntary donation, so it sounds like he was happy. But okay, Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, 1943. Witness asked for contributions in exchange for books and pamphlets. The court ruled for a witness. Of course, you can ask for whatever you want. It's free speech. It's words coming out of your mouth. West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943. A group of witnesses refused to salute the flag. The court ruled for the witnesses. Good. It ruled against them in 1940, and then it ruled for him in 43. So there was a lot of progress that was made in those 3 years. I guess in 40, people were crazy with anger against the commies, or the Nazis, and they just wanted to make people salute the flag. Okay, Prince versus Massachusetts, 1944. A witness made a child under her care to sell literature. The court ruled that it is not okay to make children work. Of course not. Yeah, it should not be okay to make anybody work. That's ridiculous. Conscientious objection to war. So I agree with the court on that. Conscientious objection to war. Okay, yes, I'm totally for a conscientious objection to war. We should not have a draft. And it's crazy to think that we had a draft in Vietnam. And I think they're trying to draft people again for like some kind of like what a lot of other countries do, where you have to join the army for 3 months or something, and that's wrong. United States versus, I don't know what that has to do with First Amendment though. United States versus Schwimmer, 1929. Hungarian woman wanted to be a citizen but refused to declare that she would take up arms to defend her country. The court ruled to deny her citizenship. And I disagree with the court on that. You should not have to declare that you would take up arms to defend your country. That is so out of date. Using that rule, you can use that clause to force people to take up arms and kill other people, to draft them into other overseas wars. We have enough guns in America. If we ever did get invaded by Mexico or Russia or China, Americans would not like that very much, and there would be plenty of guns to go around, and people would be able to do that on their own volition. So this is completely insane. I disagree with the court. United States versus McIntosh in 1931, a Canadian man refused to swear to take up arms for his country. The cool rule ruled against him, and I disagree with the court on that. So that's the same exact case. Okay. Hamilton versus Regents of the University of California, 1934. Students suspended for refusing to do school's ROTC program. The school ruled against them, and I rule against the court. I think that's stupid. Students should not be suspended for refusing to do the school's ROTC program. Nothing should be, there should be no, and this goes to another education thing that I've talked about. There should be no requirements in school. I don't think there should even be a requirement to go to school or a requirement to get a degree or a high school diploma. There should be no requirements at all. They should just have classes where you can go to and do whatever you want. And if you want to be stupid, and then you can be stupid. But nobody's going to choose to be stupid. You know, 47% of people in Detroit are illiterate because students were probably getting suspended all over the place for smoking marijuana out back, and so then they were like, all right, well, if they don't want me here, I guess I won't come. And then they didn't learn. Schools have to be a black hole that suck in students and make them want to go. And so by doing that, if you want to be a black hole that sucks students in, you have to make it an attractive place, and you have to make it a place where you're going to want to go and hang out with your friends and do whatever the hell you want. And there's also lots of cool teachers there talking about cool stuff and saying interesting things and having cool debates and all sorts of cool sports going on, you know. So don't make you do a freaking ROTC program or else you're going to get kicked out of the school. That's ridiculous. Girard versus, so I disagree with the court. Girard versus United States, 1946. Canadian refused to swear to take up arms. The court ruled for him. Yeah. Oh, I guess it was a Canadian who wanted to be a citizen. Yeah, and I agree with the Canadians, so look how far we've come from 40 to 46. United States versus Seeger, 1965. Upheld. The Universal Military Training and Service Act was conscientious objection. For conscientious objection. Well, yeah, thank you, and that was a good idea, that they upheld something in support of conscientious objection. At least I think that's what I said. I need to get back in here and fix this. Welsh versus United States, 1970. The court allowed Welsh to be declared a conscientious objector, even though he declared that his opposition to war was not based on religious convictions. Well, that's good. I agree with the court that they should allow him to be a conscientious objector, even though he was declared that his opposition to war was not based on religious convictions. So I guess they meant that conscientious objection, it has to be a religious conviction. No, it should not have to be a religious conviction. Somebody's ideas can be any kind of conviction. Don't bring semantics into it. So fix that conscientious objection clause about religion. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. Gillette versus United States, 1971, the court decided 8-1 that Congress did not act unconstitutionally by limiting conscientious objector status to those people who objected to all wars. No, you should be able to object to whatever war you want to, so I disagree with the court on this. You can, I mean, I would have fought World War II, but I would not have fought the Vietnam War. That's crazy to think you have to either hate all wars or hate only some wars. It's totally insane. So I disagree. Religion and the right to work. Yeah, you should be able to have a right to work regardless of what religion you are. So let's have an idea. Let's see what kind of court cases we've had about that. Sherbert versus Werner, 1963. The Supreme Court ruling 7-2 in favor of the woman's right to refuse to work on her Sabbath without relinquishing her right to unemployment benefits. Okay, so they ruled in favor of the woman because she didn't want to work on a Sabbath without relinquishing her right to unemployment benefits. Okay. Well, the Sabbath, that's Sunday. Sunday isn't a work day. So yes, I agree with the court. You shouldn't make somebody work on a Sunday. Slave drivers. Okay, Trans World Airlines versus Hardison. Man who fired for not working on Friday night. Court ruled in his favor. Man fired for not working on a Friday night. At airlines. Well, I think you should be able to fire somebody. People should be able to fire their employees if they want to. So I don't agree with the court on this. This is an example of the government getting involved in people. He could just get another job, and then keep the laws separate with the airline. Make it so that the airline doesn't have a monopoly, so that they have to play by the rules too. But yeah, it's getting a little bit like communism here. Okay. Okay. Okay, Ohio Civil Commission versus Dayton Christian Schools, 1986. Woman fired for getting pregnant. Court ruled in favor of allowing a civil rights investigation. So I guess they were going to investigate it, and they didn't want to allow the investigation. So yes, of course, I agree that they should allow a civil rights investigation. As far as a woman getting fired for getting pregnant at the Dayton Christian School, well, like I said, I think you should be able to fire somebody if you want, if it's a private enterprise. But this is a Christian school. I don't know if this is a private enterprise or not. If it's a private school, yeah, of course you should be able to fire. But supposing it's a public school, I think there should be government laws protecting the workers at public schools. Otherwise, you could get some crazy person in there in charge of the school and start firing teachers for allowing too much or getting pregnant. Now, as far as getting pregnant, and you're a teacher, there's nothing wrong with being pregnant and walking around pregnant. You can still teach. So, yeah, I agree with that. Allow a civil rights investigation. Corporation of the Presiding Bishops of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints versus Amigos, 1987. Man fired from a church for not being a member of the church. The court rules in favor of the church. Well, yeah. Separate church and state. Church is a private institution. Let them fire who they want. Now, I think as far as, legally, that's what I was talking about, legally. Now I was talking about morally is a different thing. I think that it's bad that they fired the guy. But, why did they hire him in the first place? Did they think they'd hire him and then he'd become a member of the church? Okay, Employment Division, Department of Human Resources of Oregon versus Smith, 1990. Men fired by a private drug rehabilitation organization because they ingested peyote. The court sided with the company. Yeah, if it's a private company, you should be able to fire whoever you want. Now, moralistically, I think that's stupid. Peyote isn't a addictive drug that you do every day. It's a very strong hallucinogen. There's no way somebody's going to eat peyote every single day. That was like a religious thing. They were just trying to experiment. Drug rehabilitation organizations have to do with cocaine, heroin, smoking. Nobody is in there for peyote. So it's not even the same thing, and that is just retarded to fire the guy for that. Okay, Employment Division, Department of Human Resources of Oregon versus Smith. Men fired by a private drug I already did this. United States versus National Treasury Employees Union, 1995. Federal employees lose funding to speak about religion, but their superiors get extra money for their lost income from the appearances. Okay. The court rules in favor of the lower level employees and allows them to keep making money for speaking about religion. So let's see here. United States versus National Treasury Employees Union. Okay, it's a National Treasury Employees Union, so that's a union. So I guess it's a non-government organization. But if unions get government money, I don't know how unions work. So I guess I need to study that up a little bit more. But but yeah, if it's funding from the government, speaking about their religion, but their superiors um, get extra money for their lost income because their superiors get their money from them. Yeah, that's not right. So I agree with the court on that. They should the federal employees, if they don't get to speak on something, don't give the money to somebody else. So, but yeah, anyways, religious tests for public service or benefits. Torcaso versus Watkins, 1961. A man denied appointment to notary public on Maryland because he refused to declare his belief in God. The court rules in favor of him, and I agree. You should not have to declare anything. Um, Notary public. This is public. So, of course, it's freedom of speech. Freedom of speech includes your freedom not to say something. You know, the government shouldn't make you move your arm up to salute the flag or move your tongue to say a certain thing. It's ridiculous. That kind of reminds me of people being, forced to hail Hitler or hail the king on pain of death. No. Okay, McDaniel versus Patty, 1978. The court ruled in favor of an ordained minister who was barred from serving in Tennessee's constitutional convention. Um, um, yeah, you should be able to serve in a constitutional convention um, if it's a government-related thing. I don't know what this. That's a private company, though. Goldman versus Weinberger, 1986. Officer wanted to wear his yarmulke inside. The court ruled against him, and I disagree. You should be able to wear your yarmulke inside. It's a hat. You should be able to have your hat inside. Don't make laws making you not be able to wear stuff. You know, I mean that's hypocritical. You have to have clothing on your torso, but you're not allowed to have clothing on your head. Don't make laws, and don't make laws against nudity either. Yeah, I'm hardcore for freedom, man. Bowen versus Roy, 1986. Indians refused to provide a social security number for food stamps. The court ruled against them, and I agree. Of course, if you're going to ask for money for the government, of course you need to play by the rules of the government and give your social security. Sounds like they're trying to get away with some kind of scam where they're going to get a whole bunch of social security stamps just because they say my name's Hernando or whatever. I'm Eagle Feather, and I'm going to sell those stamps and make a bunch of money off the goddamn government. Of course, I agree with that. Free exercise and free speech. RA versus City of St. Paul, 1992. Kids get in trouble for burning a cross in someone's lawn, according to a statute that prohibits that kind of vandalism. The cool rules for the kids. Burning a cross in someone's lawn. Well, that's trespassing. You would get them in trouble for trespassing, but don't get them in trouble for burning a cross because it's their own cross. Okay, free exercise and public education, or vandalism. If you burn their grass, get them in trouble for vandalism. So, but the court ruled for the kids. Oh, I guess it was probably in the kid's lawn himself. So yeah, I agree with the court. Free exercise and public education. Okay, Wisconsin versus Yoder, 1972. Amish stop going to school after 8th grade. The court rules for them. Yes, and you shouldn't have to make anybody go to school at all. Needs to be a free country. And you know what? More kids are going to go to school if they don't have to go to school. And if you stop suspending people from going to school, because then they're gonna know that it's all up to them, and they're gonna be more motivated. I would have been a lot more motivated student if I had not had any requirements put on me, and I was just I was like, oh my God, okay. But yet at the same time, I know that the more and they see, don't put any requirements on somebody, but put an infinite amount of possibilities for stuff for people to do. Then I would have gone to school and I would have been like, okay, cool, I'm going to write a paper about this. I'm going to write a paper about that. I'm going to give a speech about this. I'm going to take this test and I'm going to take that test, and I would have busted my ass. You know, instead of just being like, oh man, I have to go to this school, but I'm not allowed to take the test until this day, and I can only take it this time, and it's like, lost all motivation. Okay, Widmar versus Vincent, 1981. School stops allowing students to use school property to distribute religious material. This court ruled in favor of the students. Yes, I rule in favor of the student as well. The students should be able to use the school property to do whatever they want. That's what schools are for. It's for students going to and distributing religious material. Religious material, just look at religion. Religion originally is a government. It's a series of rules. It's like the beginnings of the republic, and so it's related to education and the spreading of ideas. So yeah, you need let them use the school property. Just distribute religious materials more importantly than anything else, you know, but other stuff as well. School of Education of West Side Community, well, I guess don't let them use it to like make money, you know, like to print pictures of naked girls and then you would sell it, you know, because that has nothing to do with education. Okay, Board of Education of West Side Community Schools versus Mergens, 1990. The court decided 8-1 that the students had the right to begin a Christian club. Of course they have the right to begin a Christian club, so I agree with that. Lamb's Chapel versus, because, you know, if you can't start a Christian club, that's going against the religion, and it goes against the religion clause. Don't make a law against a religion. Lamb's Chapel versus Center Moriches Union Free School District, 1993. The school ruled unanimously to reject the school district's decision to refuse to allow school property to be used for religious activities. Yeah, I agree with the court on that. You should be able to use the school property for any kind of activity, and especially a religious activity. You're trying to, you know, spread your ideas, allow them to do it whatever they want. It's their project. And it goes against the First Amendment, you know, saying that you can't go against a certain religion. You have to be for every religion. Rosenberger versus Rector and Visitors of the University of Virginia, 1995. The court ruled 5-4 that the University of Virginia inappropriately denied funding to Wide Awake Productions because they were religious. Okay, the court ruled that the university inappropriate denied, so they should have been able to deny. They should have given funding to the productions. Okay, 5-4. I guess it was close. So I guess they were arguing on whether or not Wide Awake Productions was religious. Well, I don't think that universities I guess I should put more details in this, but if it's an educational, if they give funding to stuff that's educational, and this was educational, but they were a religious group, I don't think the fact that they're a religious group shouldn't make any difference at all. What you should look at is what they're trying to educate you on, and if they're trying to educate you on. Yeah, so I think I would have sided with the court on this, although, yeah, something you'd want to know the details about. Free exercise in public property. Capitol Square Review and Advisory Board versus Panett, 1995. Ku Klux Klan wanted to put a cross in Columbus, Ohio Capitol Square for the holiday season. The court upholds it, of course. Allow the Ku Klux Klan to put a cross in Columbus, Ohio Capitol Square. The people who look at that cross aren't even going to know that the Ku Klux Klan put it there. They're going to think some Christian put it there. Free exercise and taxation. United States versus Lee, 1982. Amish man didn't want to pay his Social Security taxes and it was upheld. Wow. They let an Amish guy not pay his Social Security taxes? Wow. Interesting. I thought you had to pay your taxes no matter what, or they were going to get you. Well, this brings you up to the whole tax thing. I think it should be very black and white. I heard that the whole income tax thing wasn't even officially written into law in the first place. And so yeah, we definitely, something should be written into law. If you start enforcing stuff that's not written into law, then you don't live by a rule of law, and we need to live by a rule of law. So this just confuses me, and I would not have upheld that. And if you're going to uphold that, then don't make anybody pay their taxes. Just because he's Amish, that's giving special treatment to a religion, which goes against the religious clause. So I don't agree with that. Bob Jones University versus United States in 1983. The IRS revoked the tax-exempt status of 2 racist schools, and it was upheld. 2 racist schools. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, if it's, I would agree with that. A school should have to allow anybody of any race to join their school if they're going to get government funding. Solicitation by religious groups. Heffron versus International Society for Krishna Consciousness, 1981. Krishnas weren't allowed to distribute literature in a Minnesota fair, okay, and it was upheld. They were not allowed to distribute. Well, if it was private property, don't allow them to do it if the owner doesn't want them. But if it's a public fair, then of course you need to allow them to do that, because you can uphold your, it's upholding the First Amendment. Now, talking about private versus public, well, yeah, we should try and keep everything as public as we can, and not allow companies to get too big, because then they can turn themselves into their own countries where they can, they don't have to respect the First Amendment, which is a whole nother video. Free exercise, and so yeah, so I think we should have as much stuff public as we possibly can. Free exercise and eminent domain. Lying versus Northwest Indian CPA 1988. Forest Service wanted to build a 6-mile road through Chimney Rock and Six Rivers National Forest on Indian ceremonial land, and it was upheld. What the hell does that have to do with the First Amendment? National forest. Well, if you're not supposed to make roads on a national forest, you should allow that. But it's religious because the Indians didn't want it, because it was in their ceremonial land, and the national forest wanted to make the road. Yeah, I would uphold that. I think you should. I think you should allow the Forest Service. At least I think that's what they're upholding. I think the Forest Service should be allowed to build a road through the Indian ceremonial land. That's just superstition. The Indians could just, if they don't like it for some money reason, they could just say, oh, but that was our ceremonial land. No, you can't do it because it's our ceremonial land. And that's giving special preferential treatment to a certain religion, even though they're natives. It's giving preferential treatment to a certain religion, and you know, if you're going to let them do that, then you're going to have to let Christians, you know, make it so that the government can't build a road over a mountain because it's our special Christian, you know. No, yeah, so I agree with the government on that. Forest Service. City of Bourne versus Flores, 97. Church wanted to enlarge their building and the historic district. The court ruled against them, 6-3. Well, yeah, I would agree with the court. If it's a historical district and you have zoning laws against enlarging a building, yeah, and treat them just like everybody else. Separation of church and state. Outlawing of religious sacrifice. Church of the Lukumi Babalu I versus City of Hialeah in 93. The court unanimously invalidated the city ordinances that outlawed animal sacrifices. So they said that you were allowed to sacrifice animals because because you're trying to protect the religion. I disagree with that. I think they should outlaw sacrificing of animals. That's not that's not a valid. That's just superstitious, retarded religion. And even though it's their religion, you shouldn't murder your religion. Animals are beings. They're people and they have rights. If you're going to allow them to kill animals, then you're going to have to allow the scientismists to do experimentation on animals. So yeah, don't allow the murder of animals. Now, as far as experimentation on animals, that's another subject. I don't think they should do experimentation on animals unless it's absolutely necessary. But yeah, we should not be doing experimentation on animals. Okay, the establishment of religion standing to sue. Flast versus Cohen, 1968. The court ruled that the taxpayers could sue the federal government if its spending violated a specific limitation on its power. Well, yeah, you don't want to violate any limitation on your power. So I agree with that. My God. Kind of reminds me of the Federal Reserve. We can break rules and do stuff secretly, whatever. Okay, Valley Forge Christian College versus Americans United for Separation of Church and State, 1982. The court permitted 5-4 a grant of land to a Christian college stand. Okay. Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Well, I don't think we should be granting public land to private enterprises. So I disagree with that. I would have been in one of the four. My God. Separate church and state. I'm with the separations for church and state. Sounds like a scam to me. Okay, Bender of Williamsfort, 1986. The court ruled that one member of a school board cannot use the interest of the board to confer standing upon himself. Okay. I don't know what that means. I need to look into this one a little bit more and fix my page some, but the court ruled that one member of a school board cannot use the interest of a board. Yeah, I don't think you should twist people's arms and, go beyond what your rights are. So yeah, I agree. I agree with the court on that. Tax exemption to religious institutions. Wallach versus Tax Commission of the City of New York, 1970. The court upheld the tax exemption for churches by a vote of 8-1. And I agree. I disagree. I would have been in one of the one. Don't tax exempt churches. If you're going to tax people, tax everybody. These are private institutions. Texas Monthly Incorporated versus Bullock, 1989. The court decided that exempting religious publications from the state sales tax violated the Establishment Clause. Okay, I don't know what the Establishment Clause is. Oh, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Establishment of religion. The court decided that exempting religious publications from the state from state sales tax. Yeah, I agree that does violate the Establishment Clause. You need to tax everybody, tax private institutions, even if it's the church. Yes, I agree. Okay, Sunday work. McGowan versus Maryland. I mean, if a church can't make enough money from donations, then just let them be a smaller church and don't make them be a church. Don't give extra money from taxpayers who aren't Christians to the Christian church. It's not fair. Okay, Sunday work. McGowan versus Maryland, 1961. Store fined for selling things on Sunday. The court ruled that a Maryland Sunday closing laws had evolved into furthering secular ends and did not violate the Establishment Clause. So yeah, I think the store should not be fined for selling things on a Sunday. You should be able to sell stuff whenever you want. Just like you should be able to buy alcohol on a Sunday. And that was a ridiculous law, which thankfully they stopped in Utah and I think in Colorado too. So you're allowed to buy beer on Sunday, thank God. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. The Maryland Sunday, but they said that the Maryland Sunday closing law did not violate the Establishment Clause. So I disagree. I disagree with the court on this. I mean, if a company hires you and they make you work on a Sunday, and you agree with that, then you should work on a Sunday. I guess that goes back to that woman who was pregnant and didn't want to, or she was Jewish and didn't want to work on a Sunday or something, and then she still wanted to get her unemployment benefits. So yeah, and I didn't side with her then, but now, I mean, I did side with her then, but now I'm not siding with her. Yeah, because you know what you're signing up for when you do it. You don't sign up for a job and then change your mind and then say that you want your benefits. Yeah. So, Bonfield versus Brown, 1961. A Jew wanted his store open on a Sunday. His court ruled against him. Well, yeah, I think a Jew and anybody should be able to have your store open whenever you want. And I don't know what the reasoning behind making stuff closed on a Sunday. If it's like a public school, you shouldn't make your school open on a Sunday, but that involves other people. If you're gonna, if you want to go to your house and paint your house on a Sunday, it's the same thing as opening your store on a Sunday. It's private property. Thornton versus Caldor, 1985. Man didn't want to work on Sunday. Court ruled 8-1 against him because it had a direct effect on advancing a particular religious practice. Yeah. Yeah, don't protect somebody just because it's against your religion on a Sunday. Just get a job where you don't have to work on a Sunday if that's your thing, obviously. So I agree with the court. Religious institution functioning as a government agency. Yeah, I do not think a religious institution should function as a government agency. Larkin versus Grindel's Den, Bowen versus Kendrick, 1988. Man wanted to sell liquor 10 feet from a church. Court ruled 8-1 for him, and I agree with the court. What the hell does the church give a fuck about? That's ridiculous. Bored, and where did Jesus ever say you're not supposed to get drunk? I mean, what, didn't Moses get wasted after he brought the Ten Commandments back? Or he made some promise because he was too drunk. I mean, people getting drunk are in the Bible. Board of Education of Cureless, Joel Village School versus Grummet, 1994. A school district was drawn specifically to include only Jews. Court ruled 6-3 against them, and I agree with the court. You don't be, okay, this is the district. Okay, oh, move it over here, move it over here. Okay, no. Trying to separate one religion from another. You should just do it by the neighborhood. You move into the neighborhood. You can move into a neighborhood whatever you want to because they're Jews, but don't yeah. Okay, unequal government treatment of religious groups. Larson versus Valente, 1982. Unification Church didn't want to have to register with Minnesota's Department of Commerce. The court ruled 5-4 for the church. Well, I would have ruled against the church. I would have been in one of those four. Churches, I think, should be looked at as just another business, and so you have to register as a business. Treat them the same. Legislative chaplains, Marsh versus Chambers, 1983. The court voted 6-3, permitting the practice of beginning the legislative session with a prayer given by the publicly funded chaplain. I would have been one of the three. I vote against the court. Don't publicly fund a chaplain to do a prayer. If the chaplain wants to do a prayer, then he can be funded by his church. We are subsidizing the church too much. Don't subsidize a church. It goes directly against the law and the First Amendment that says we shall not make any law for or against any religion. Government-sponsored nativity scenes. Lentz versus Donnelly, 1984. The court ruled 5-4 that the city of Pawtucket could continue to display a nativity scene as part of its Christmas display. Yes, I'm one of the four. They should be able to continue a display of nativity scene. Obviously, freedom of speech. County of Allegheny versus ACLU Greater Pittsburgh Chapter, 1989. Two religious symbols in Pittsburgh crash outside the county courthouse and a menorah outside the city-county building. The court ruled for the menorah and against the crash in a fragmented decision. That's fucked up. You should rule for both. My God. That is some anti-Christianity there. That's ridiculous. And that was in 89? My God. I'm horrified. Government aid to public education. McCollum versus Board of Education, 1948. The court disallowed 6-1 the practice of allowing religious education to take place in public school classrooms during the second day. Okay, so I would have been in one of the one. I think the court should definitely allow religious education to take place in public classrooms. The school should be able to teach whatever they want, and then, kind of capitalism. If a bunch of kids go to a class, then it's a successful class, and you keep the class going. If you do one class, only one student comes up, you discontinue that class. Duh, but allow it. Zorach versus Clausen, 1952. The court permitted 6-3 the public school students to travel to parochial schools to receive religious education. Yes, of course, allow the students to go to school where the hell they want. They're paying for the freaking traveling. Engel versus Vitale, 1962. The court ruled that requiring students to recite prayer is unconstitutional. Yes, and I agree. Don't require anybody to do anything. If you require them to recite a prayer, you're making a law for a certain religion, and it's so obvious that that's against the Constitution. These people should have read the Constitution. Abington Township School District versus Shemp, 1963. Murray challenged the requirement of the Baltimore School Board that the Lord's Prayer be recited prior to the beginning of the day's classes. The court ruled 8-1 against the allowing the reciting of the Bible verses and Lord's Prayer. Okay. Well, see, this is a public school, and the guy's using public school time to recite a Lord's Prayer. Well, I think I would have been in the one. I think he should have been allowed to recite his Lord's Prayer. If it's the teacher doing it, if the students know that the teacher's reciting a Lord's Prayer for like, what, 30 seconds, then the students could just show up after he's done with his Lord's Prayer, and it could just be the class that starts 30 seconds late, and then the students could make fun of the teacher for reciting the Lord's Prayer and make a website saying he's a douche for making a Lord's Prayer, but allow him to do it. He was probably doing it because all the students in there wanted him to do it, and they liked it. That doesn't violate the Constitution. That violates freedom of speech, even though it's part of the public school. It's only a couple of seconds, and it's his school. The class, the school guy, he could fire the teacher. Okay. But that was a controversial one, definitely. Okay. Epperson versus Arkansas, 1968. No teacher was permitted to teach that mankind ascended or descended from a lower order of animals. Oh my God. The school, and this was in 68, the school ruled that Arkansas could not stipulate which models of creation could or could not be taught in school. Yeah, and I agree with the court. Don't stipulate which model can and cannot be taught in school. You can let people teach whatever the hell they want and whatever thing is most popular that people go to, and there you go. Stone versus Graham, 1980. A Kentucky law required the posting of the 10 Commandments in each public school classroom. No. The court ruled 5-4 the Kentucky law unconstitutional, and I agree. I would have been in one of the 5. Don't require something that is religious. It makes a law for a certain religion. Let them put it up if they want to, but don't make a law requiring it. We must make a law, because if we don't make the law, they won't do it, and then they won't obey. God, what a bunch of idiots. Wallace versus Jaffrey, 1985. An Alabama law required that each school day begin with a moment of silent meditation or voluntary prayer. The court ruled 6-3 that the Alabama law was unconstitutional, and I agree. I am one of the 6. Don't make a law requiring the silent meditation prayer. That's like making a law requiring the guy reciting the Lord's Prayer. Don't make a law requiring him to do it, but allow him to do it if he wants to. Agostini versus Felton, 97. Oops, I don't know what that is. I didn't write anything about it, so I don't know. Mitchell versus Helms, 2000, in a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that it was permissible for loans to be made to religious schools. And I agree. I'm one of the 6. It should definitely be permissible for loans to be made to religious schools. Loans should be able to be paid to anything. Government, well, I guess it's more complicated than that, but that's what I say. Government aid to church-related schools. Okay, I don't think there should be government aid to church-related schools. Well, just church-related schools. But let's see. Let's look at the details here. How much farther do we have to go? Okay. Pierce versus Society of Sisters in 1925. Oregon, compulsory education at a public school law challenged by a Catholic school. The court ruled for the school. Okay. At a public school, compulsory education, and I agree. I rule for the school. Education should definitely not be compulsory. I mean, that's not freedom, man. And I don't know what that has to do with the First Amendment, but I guess because it's a religious school. Cochran versus, yeah, let religions do whatever they want, but don't give them money because it's a religious school. Keep it out, separated. Cochran versus Louisiana State Board of Education, 1930. The court upheld the Louisiana statute that provided state funds for the purchasing of textbooks for both religious and public school students. Okay, so we're using state funds for religious stuff. Well, I would not vote for that. I think I disagree with the court. However, if it's a religious class, if it's a class on the Bible and the Bible is one of them, then there should be public funds for those books. You know, and if that's the popular class to take because everybody happens to be Christian, then yes. So I would definitely agree with the court in that case. However, if it happens to be a school that is a bunch of Jews and they want to learn the Torah, then you know you're going to have a Bible about the Torah, and then you want to publicly fund people to buy that book. You know, and the same thing goes with any religion. It just depends on what class the students at that school happen to be taking based on what they're interested in. So in that case, I would assume that it's that, so I would just go ahead and agree with the court on that. Everson versus Board of Education, 1947. New Jersey pays for the transport to private school. Ruled 5-4 for the plan, and I disagree. I'm one of the 4 that don't subsidize a private school. That sounds fishy to me. It's ridiculous. Private schools should be private. Then you're making it a public by paying for the transport. That's totally ridiculous. 1947 though. Board of Education versus Allen, 1968. New York paid for books for both public and private schools, and it was upheld. Oh my God, that is ridiculous. That is classism right there. So the rich kids gets to go to the nice private school where they get all the cool stuff that the parents pay for, and the government has to pay for it. Yeah, I'm not into that. Private school should be a private school. However, let me include this, and maybe I would end up agreeing with the government with the court on this. If you send your kids to a private school, you should definitely be credited the amount of money that you're saving the government by your student not going to a public school. There should be a certain number that the government has tallied up on how much money they spend per student. And if you want to homeschool, or if you want to, if you want to homeschool, you should get a tax exemption or money from the government to homeschool on that money. And if you want to go to a private school, then that private school should be donated the amount of money that the public school already used. So I guess in that case I would uphold. But this is for books, and I don't think it should be for books. I should think it should be for the school itself and not make it convoluted. So I disagree in the end. Lemon versus Kurtzman, 1971. Rhode Island paid 15% of private school teachers' salaries. Ruled unanimously against it. You know what? I would rule for it. because those teachers, because the kids were, well, actually, I rule against it. I agree with the court on this because I don't think they should have done it that way. What I think they should have done is they should have given the school itself a subsidy based on how many students were going there, therefore thusly saving the public school system because those students were not there. That's what I would have decided, so I agree. Tilton versus Richardson, 1971. Church-sponsored institutions paid to build non-religious buildings, but in 20 years would go to them. Ruled 8-1 against the 20-year rule. Yes, I agree. I would have been one of the 8. Church-sponsored institutions paid to build non-religious buildings. Yeah, well, if those church-sponsored institutions are sponsored by the government, yeah. 20 years would go to the, that just sounds bizarre. Yeah, I don't think you should sponsor the church institution at all. To Caesar what is Caesar, and why would they want to keep it for only 20 years anyway? What the hell are they thinking? They're gonna like destroy the building and then hand it over dilapidated? Well, then they still use the government money to build it, so yeah. I agree with this. I'm one of the 8. A Committee for Public Education and Religious Liberty versus Nyquist, 1973. The court permitted New York's plan to reimburse non-public schools for the cost resulting from offering and recording the results of state-mandated tests. Okay, let's see what I have to say about this. Permitted New York's plan to reimburse non-public schools. Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I agree. Definitely reimburse non-public schools for costs resulting from offering and recording the results of state-mandated tests. If you're saving the government money by taking care of it yourself, you should be reimbursed for that money. However, I think the tests should be given at a neutral place. So, you know, you go to the private school to learn whatever the hell you want to do. Public schools teach whatever the hell they teach, and then there should be a government central test of all these different tests that is funded by the government, and then you go there and you take it. Okay? So these tests should not be orchestrated by the private schools, because in the private school, private schools can have their own tests to help along with the education, but they shouldn't be, yeah, given public money. So actually, I disagree with this. I definitely disagree with this. Don't reimburse non-public schools for their own tests, but give them their subsidies for the money they're saving the students who aren't going to the public school. Meek versus Pittinger, 1975. The court permitted Pennsylvania to purchase textbooks for non-public schools, but did not allow for the purchase of instructional materials for the supplication of special needs instructors. Wow, this is getting complicated. The court permitted Pennsylvania to purchase textbooks for non-public schools. Okay, yeah, purchase textbooks for non-public schools. According to how much they're saving the public school for. I don't think it should go by textbooks though. I think it should go, the subsidy, it should be really simple. The subsidy should go to the public school based on how many students they have, and that's it. Not on the textbooks. You figure in the textbooks on how much students cost public schools, and you don't break it up on all this tiny little convoluted stuff. So I guess I would vote against that, because even though it's related to the, that other thing I was talking about. But did not allow for the purpose of instructional materials for the supplication of special needs instructors. See, this is just convoluted, like confusion right here, man. Yeah, like I said, just subsidize the student, the school, private school for the student, and keep all this other stuff out of it, because this stuff naturally gets plugged into the cost of the student. All students should be cost the same amount. Okay, Romer versus Board of Public Works of Maryland. That's another subject, though. Okay, Romer versus Board of Public Works of Maryland, 1976. The court permitted Maryland to pay non-public schools with the stipulation that money only be spent on secular functions. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Pay non-public schools because they save the public system because those kids aren't going to the public school. So I totally agree with this, even though I'm sure the laws need to be totally revamped. Woolman versus Walter, 1977. The court allowed Ohio to provide textbooks, standardized tests, therapeutic and diagnostic services to non-public school children. However, the state could not offer educational materials or subsidize field trips. Yeah, you see, this goes into that whole convoluted nonsense. I definitely think that you should help public schools, non-public schools, but it should be so simple. It's just on how many students they have, and there you go. Based on the entire cost, of a school that's enrolled in a public school. If you're a kid, whether you go to school or not, you get a certain amount of money. You get to either go to the school for free, or you can't participate in the school at all, and you get the money for homeschooling, and you can do whatever the hell you want with that, or you get the amount of money helped towards the private school that you go to. Committee for Public Education and Religious Liberty versus Reagan, 1980. The court permitted New York's plan to reimburse non-public schools for the costs resulting from offering and reporting the results of state-mandated tests. Same thing. But since it's all so convoluted, I would go ahead and agree with this, permit the reimbursing of non-public schools because they're saving the students on this case aren't taking the private school test, so yeah, let the money go to the public school for the testing. Mueller versus Allen, 1983. A Minnesota law allowed parents to deduct from their state income taxes any school expenses, ruled 5-4, to allow the deductions to be made by parents with students attending religious schools. Yes, obviously, if they're not costing the government, so I agree with this, if they're not accosting the government going to the public school, then let them deduct the taxes and because they're going to the private school. But it's a convoluted mess. Should be my idea. Make it simple. Aguilar versus Felton. Court ruled 5-4 New York City's plan to pay the salaries of parochial school employees who offered remedial assistance to low-income students. Yeah, I agree with that. Sounds convoluted, but I agree. Pay the teachers to teach the students. Grand Rapids School District versus Ball, 1985. Private schools rented rooms to public schools. So I guess when they're talking private schools, they're talking like religious schools, private/religious school. It's interesting because that's not my idea of a private school. It's just a school if some dude has his own way of teaching because the fucking public school system is so retarded. I don't think, now let's just talk about that real quick. I don't think there would be a problem, if they're like, oh yeah, if you give a certain amount of money to the public school, then the private school won't have, everybody will drop out of the private school and then they'll just take the money to do homeschooling in private schools. I don't think that's true. You just fix the public school system and make the public school system good, and then kids are going to prefer to go to the public school because that's where most of the kids go, that's where the good buildings are, where most of the buildings are, and then you just go and it's and it works, And then the private schools can be the schools for the freaky, weird people who want to limit themselves and study only a certain thing. Grand Rapids School District versus Ball, 1985. Private school rented rooms to public schools. The court invalidated the programs because they had the primary effect of advancing religion. Okay. Well, no, I disagree with that. I think the private schools should be allowed to rent a room to a public school. It's just a room. Zobrist, if the public school needs it. Zobrist versus Catalina Foothill School District ruled 5-4 to make school district pay for a sign language interpreter for a boy at a Catholic school. Well, if they would have paid for the guy at the public school, then yes, obviously pay for the kid at the Catholic school as well, because he's a student and he's not costing the system any money by being at the public school. So he's actually doing the system a favor. So yeah, I agree. Prayer in public schools. Lee versus Weissman, 1992. A man thanked God in a graduation speech. The court ruled 5-4 that the graduation prayer violated the Establishment Clause. And I disagree. I'm one of the four. I think it's his speech. He should be able to say whatever the hell he wants. And the Establishment Clause protects him to express his religion. So it does not violate the Establishment Clause. It's just it violates the First Amendment freedom of speech clause. So yeah, I'm one of the four. Disagree. Teaching of creation in public schools. Edward versus Aguilar, 1987. Evolution couldn't be taught in Louisiana without including creationism. The court ruled 7-2 that they could teach evolution alone, and I agree. I'm one of the 7. You can teach evolution alone. They're 2 separate subjects. Most people, the vast majority of people, are interested in, probably even in Louisiana, are interested in evolution and not creation. I wouldn't say the vast majority, but definitely the majority. So let them teach evolution. Don't make a law against it. Teach creationism in a class if you get students, then that's another subject. Okie dokie, that's me talking about the First Amendment.